Finish your projects. I think something that isn't mentioned enough in the hobby is that finishing stuff is a skill that needs practicing. And if you're not constantly meeting goals that you're setting for yourself, you're practicing the wrong type of skill. If you ever thought to yourself, how do I improve in my hobby? Finishing stuff is the best way to do it because you get a lot of skills and they're all well-rounded. Today, I'm going to be finishing my 1,000 subscriber Mordheim board, and I've put it off for about 2 months. We're going to be using a lot of quote-unquote finished projects from previous videos. Links to those will be in the cards in the top right corner. You've summoned a lesser maker. Make sure your wizards transcribe this spell down, or subscribe if you're not a spellcaster. Let's get started. We're going to use these finished builds as puzzle pieces to complete this board. The center of the board I kind of have figured out, but for this side I'm settling on this castle piece that I built a couple weeks ago. I'm just going to be tearing it apart and trying to make it fit in this small narrow section. Narrow pieces like this are always a little tricky, and you got to make sure that nothing really overhangs all that much, or it might run into the board next to it. I'm just gluing this down with hot glue, and then any squeeze out will be covered up with a texture paste later. I thought a really cool, really tall tower on this side would look really nice. There's going to be a really tall tower in the center of this board, so having tall structures on the sides of this will kind of help balance the board out a bit. I asked for suggestions on this side of the board, and I was suggested to do some gallows, and so this guy in a cage I think kind of fit perfectly for that idea. I put in some extra walkways and then busted out some walls so to make this side of the castle traversable. Added a bit of a fallen wall to act as a ladder, an improvised climbing thing. And we're going to move on to the other side of the board where we're going to install this greenhouse. This was my last STL pack. It's still free, so you can download this on the Patreon. This is something I'm really proud of, and I think it's really unique for Mordheim, and it fits really nicely in the world. So I cut this thing apart and kind of mangled it up a bit and added some towers and walkways on top to add a bit of variety. I just glued this in with hot glue again, and the hot glue doesn't really work on this type of plastic, and that's something that always kind of catches me off guard, but super glue works really great. So I just kind of changed my glue setup to super glue gel, and everything went together really nicely. I added some more cover by breaking apart some of the other pieces of this set that I made, and then added some stairs, and I think it looks really nice. So we're going to glue in the main tower here, and this piece is my favorite piece that I've made in a long time. I built this one with the laser cutter, and this was a one-day build, and I'm really happy with how, actually this one is laser cut too, and I'm really happy with how nicely these kind of fit together with the other pieces. There are a lot of different methods of building here on this board, and they all fit together really nicely, and that's something I'm really proud of. I broke a hole onto this side of the castle as kind of an improvised entryway, and I just kind of went over everything with making sure that the walkways were traversable, and playability is always something I struggle with, and I think this is probably my most traversable board yet. I might have to revisit some of the old ones to make sure that they're as playable as this one is. Now I'm going to be mixing up a texture base. I went with Elmer's glue, pink spackle. I put in some sand and brown paint and a little bit of black paint. This kind of makes a really muddy texture, and it kind of is a catch-all, and it will unify everything to the board. I think this really sets my boards apart from other boards. Everything's really integrated, and it looks like it's all from the same world. And this texture paste is really crucial to that, making sure that there's no hot glue and nothing that really screams that these are two separate pieces. Everything is really integrated, and the grunge really helps with making sure that everything is uniform, in my opinion at least. And wherever I broke a piece off and it's not sealed, I made sure to put this texture on there because it will make sure that that foam core is really solid and strong. It's going to reinforce that, and it's going to make sure that I don't have to paint it later. And if I don't have to pick up a paintbrush, it's going to save me a lot of time. So I just went around with every single build and made sure that each side had some texture and some grime, and kind of rounded the corners between the build and the board. And I think it looks really great. At this point, I'm really seeing, and I get to imagine being one of the characters on this board, and seeing how they traverse, and I was really happy with this. This side of the board had no texture whatsoever. It just had a bit of spray paint, and so I'm going to be putting the rest of the texture paste that was in the pot and smooth it out on this side. Put in a tree from one of my pipe cleaner tree tutorials. Halfway through the drying time, you want to go in because it will self-level and kind of just look like a puddle. I always like it looking a little more grittier, so going in and breaking the surface tension halfway through the drying time will do that for you. Make sure you don't use a good brush on this because it's kind of nasty. I've been working on an STL pack called the Building Accessories Pack, and that has stuff like windows and building accessories like hanging signs like this one, and I've been working on this for 2 months. Now, I could charge you for this, but I'm a little insane, and I just decided I'd like to give this to you guys for free. So you can go on my Patreon and download this now. I've been working really hard on it, so there is an option to donate $5 my way in the shop section at Patreon. That would be really appreciated, but no pressure. I just like to help this game become easily accessible for all builders. It's a free game, and so I like to provide free terrain, just to kind of pay it forward. Thank you guys so much, and this is just a way of saying thanks for 1,000 subscribers. Patreon members have got early access to this throughout this entire process, and it's only $2 a month. So that's another way you could say thanks for this, but really no pressure. I just like to help you guys build things. This is another hanging sign, and this is another hanging sign, and I think it goes a long way to add a bit of detail, kind of steal the show a bit so that you don't have to be so precise. And I put little pegs on the back sides of all these hanging signs and lights so that you can just stick this right into the foam core. Obviously you can use glue, but I just friction fit all this stuff and it worked really great. And I even built this platform using this stuff. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to thank my Patreon members real quick. Thanks to Leroy, Moonbad, Feder, Caracal, Old School FRP, Burning Heart Custom Creations, James, Anders, and Hanover, our newest patron. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys' support. The big gap between big builds like this is mostly because it takes money to save up for this stuff. So Patreon support really does help fill that gap. I really appreciate you guys watching. Subscribe, leave a like and a comment and stuff. You guys know what to do. All right, have a good one.